You are tired, but not from work. You are exhausted from caring too much, caring what they think, caring what they say, caring whether you are liked, approved, or understood. Listen closely, because this idea will challenge the way you have been conditioned to live. From childhood, you were taught that caring deeply makes you virtuous, that emotional involvement proves your worth, that reacting strongly means you are alive. But Machiavelli understood a truth that polite society hides: excessive emotion does not make you noble, it makes you predictable. And predictability is the doorway through which control enters. Emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling, it is the refusal to let feeling rule decision. When you react instantly, emotionally, without distance, you hand over authority. You allow others to steer your mood, your choices, and ultimately, your future. The man who reacts is always behind. The man who observes, pauses, and detaches is already ahead of the board. Notice how easily people are provoked today. A comment, a look, a rumor, a delay, a disagreement. Their peace collapses instantly. Their emotions flare before their intellect arrives. This is not passion. This is weakness disguised as sincerity. Machiavelli would say that a ruler who cannot govern his own emotions will never govern anything else. The same law applies to life. When you detach emotionally, you gain something rare: clarity. You begin to see situations as they are, not as your feelings paint them. Insults lose their poison. Praise loses its intoxication. You stop swinging between arrogance and insecurity, because neither applause nor criticism controls your inner state. This is power in its quietest form. Think of how many of your problems exist only because you care too much about outcomes you cannot command. You care how you are perceived. You care whether others validate your choices. You care about fairness in a world that has never promised it. Each unnecessary attachment becomes a chain. Emotional detachment breaks those chains without noise. The detached man does not rush to defend himself. He understands that explanation is often submission. He does not chase respect. He lets consistency and composure create it. While others argue, justify, and plead, he remains still. Stillness unnerves people. Calm unsettles manipulators. Those who seek to provoke lose interest when there is nothing to pull. Machiavelli observed that men reveal their weaknesses through their desires and fears. Emotion exposes both. When someone knows what angers you, excites you, or wounds you, they hold leverage. Detachment removes that leverage. You become difficult to manipulate, difficult to distract, difficult to control. This is why emotional restraint has always been mistaken for coldness by those who depend on chaos. Understand this clearly. Emotional detachment does not mean you do not care about anything. It means you care strategically. You reserve emotional energy for what compounds your strength, not what drains it. You choose discipline over impulse, long-term advantage over short-term relief. In doing so, life begins to feel less hostile, less overwhelming, less exhausting. Watch how leaders, generals, and strategists behave under pressure. They do not panic publicly. They do not indulge in emotional displays. They calculate. They wait. They let others reveal themselves through reaction. Emotional detachment allows you to gather information while others are busy expressing themselves. Silence becomes a weapon. Patience becomes a shield. Most people believe that detachment makes life empty. In truth, it makes life efficient. You stop wasting energy on imagined threats, unnecessary conflicts, and emotional theater. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of obeying impulse. Each moment of restraint strengthens your position because you are no longer leaking power through uncontrolled emotion. The world is designed to test your reactions. Every delay, every insult, every disappointment asks the same question: can this person be moved? Once you stop answering that question with emotion, once you deny the world easy access to your inner state, you begin to experience a strange shift. Situations that once overwhelmed you become manageable. People who once intimidated you lose their grip. Problems shrink when they are not fed emotional intensity. Emotional detachment creates power because it returns ownership of your mind to you. When you no longer live at the mercy of external triggers, you begin to operate from intention rather than reflex, from strategy rather than impulse, from observation rather than emotional blindness. And in that space, control quietly forms where chaos once lived. Pay attention to how loud the world has become. Opinions shout from every direction, demands arrive without invitation, and expectations press against you like invisible hands. Most people believe their exhaustion comes from effort, but Machiavelli would recognize the real cause immediately. They give attention to everything, and when everything is given importance, nothing is understood clearly. Indifference is not ignorance, it is selection. It is the discipline of deciding what deserves access to your mind and what does not. Without this filter, your thoughts become crowded, your judgment weakens, and your direction blurs. The world thrives on distraction because distracted minds are easily led. Look at how people react to trivial matters. They argue over opinions that change nothing. They worry about judgments from those who will never influence their destiny. They spend hours emotionally invested in events that do not improve their position. This constant engagement creates the illusion of involvement while quietly stealing clarity and momentum. Machiavelli observed that power belongs to those who see patterns while others chase details. Indifference allows you to step back and view the whole board. When you stop reacting to every minor stimulus, you begin to notice what truly matters. You recognize leverage points. You see motives instead of words. You understand when silence is more effective than response. The unfiltered mind becomes reactive by default. Every notification demands attention. Every criticism invites defense. Every comparison breeds insecurity. This is not life happening to you. This is life consuming you. Indifference interrue. PTS this cycle. It teaches you to ask a simple but dangerous question. Does this deserve my energy? Most of what drains you does not deserve it. The opinions of those who do not build with you. The drama that offers no advantage. The arguments that produce no outcome. By withdrawing attention, you starve these distractions. They fade not because they disappear, but because they no longer occupy space within you. Notice how manipulators operate. They provoke emotional responses, manufacture urgency, and flood attention channels. Their strength lies in noise. Indifference dismantles their tactics. When you do not rush to react, they reveal themselves. When you do not explain, they lose control of the narrative. When you remain unmoved, their influence weakens. Machiavelli understood that men are ruled by perception. If you appear easily disturbed, you are easily tested. If you appear selective, calm, and unresponsive to trivialities, people hesitate. They sense depth, they sense control. Indifference communicates confidence without speech. It signals that your attention is valuable and not freely given. This filtering process reshapes your inner world. Thoughts slow down, emotions stabilize, decisions improve. You no longer feel pulled in multiple directions because you have removed most of the ropes. Life becomes simpler not because it loses complexity, but because you stop engaging with unnecessary complexity. The modern world encourages constant engagement. React now, share now, defend now, compare now. Indifference is an act of quiet rebellion. It restores your sovereignty. You decide when to engage, when to withdraw, and when to observe. This choice alone separates leaders from followers. When you stop caring about every opinion, you gain perspective. When you stop responding to every challenge, you gain authority. When you stop monitoring every external signal, you regain focus. Your mind becomes a controlled environment rather than an open battlefield. Think of attention as currency. Every moment you spend reacting is a payment. Most people go bankrupt emotionally because they spend without evaluation. Indifference teaches restraint. It preserves capital. It ensures that when something truly demands action, you have the clarity and energy to respond effectively. Machiavelli would remind you that those who rule do not explain themselves to the crowd. They listen selectively, act deliberately, and remain untouched by noise. The moment you stop mistaking noise for importance, your life shifts from reaction to direction, from confusion to clarity, from constant mental exhaustion to controlled awareness. From the moment you become aware of others, pressure begins. Pressure to fit in, pressure to agree, pressure to be accepted, praised, and validated. Society trains you to believe that belonging equals safety and rejection equals danger. Machiavelli would call this one of the most effective forms of control ever created, because a man who fears social judgment will betray his own interests without being forced. Social pressure works silently. No chains are visible, Yet behavior changes instantly. People soften their opinions, dilute their ambitions, and hide their true nature simply to avoid standing alone. This is not harmony. This is obedience. And obedience without awareness is weakness. Self-mastery begins the moment you recognize this pressure for what it is. Not guidance, not morality, but a force designed to shape you into something predictable. When you allow social approval to guide your decisions, you surrender authorship of your life. You begin living according to external reward systems rather than internal standards. Machiavelli understood that the crowd is fickle. Today it praises, tomorrow it condemns. To build your identity on public opinion is to build on shifting ground. The man who seeks approval will constantly adjust himself, never becoming solid, never becoming feared or respected, only tolerated when useful. Self-mastery requires emotional independence. It demands that you act based on strategy rather than applause. This does not mean antagonizing others deliberately. It means refusing to let consensus replace judgment. When everyone moves in one direction, the self-mastered man asks why. When everyone condemns, he evaluates. When everyone praises, he remains cautious. Notice how social pressure rewards conformity disguised as virtue. Speak like this, think like that. Care about these things, ignore those. Those who deviate are labeled cold, arrogant, or dangerous. Machiavelli would smile at this tactic. Labeling is a weapon used to keep individuals within acceptable boundaries. The moment you stop fearing labels, power returns. When insults no longer correct your behavior, when praise no longer dictates your values, you gain freedom that most will never experience. You begin to act from internal alignment rather than external expectation. Social pressure also feeds comparison. Who is ahead? Who is admired? Who is envied? Comparison weakens focus. It turns life into performance rather than progress. The self-mastered man competes only with his own past position. He measures growth, not applause. Think about how often you hesitate to speak, act, or move because you imagine how it will be received. That hesitation is the cost of social pressure. Over time, these small hesitations accumulate into a life lived below capacity. Machiavelli warned that hesitation is often more damaging than failure because it teaches you to doubt yourself. Self-mastery trains you to tolerate discomfort, the discomfort of being misunderstood, the discomfort of standing alone, the discomfort of being different. This tolerance separates leaders from followers. Most people avoid discomfort at all costs. Those who master themselves learn to use discomfort as a signal that they are no longer being controlled. The self-mastered man does not announce his independence. He demonstrates it through consistency. He does not chase belonging. He attracts alignment. People sense when someone cannot be easily swayed. That resistance creates respect, even among those who disagree. Social pressure loses its power when you realize it cannot harm you unless you cooperate. Disapproval cannot damage your goals. Rejection cannot destroy your direction. Only your response can. Once this understanding settles, fear loosens its grip. Machiavelli believed that strength begins internally. Armies, wealth, and alliances are secondary. Without self-command, external power collapses under pressure. The same principle governs personal life. When you command your impulses, fears, and need for validation, external circumstances lose their dominance. Self-mastery over social pressure simplifies life. Decisions become cleaner. Values become stable. You stop performing and start building. The noise of opinion fades into background static. What remains is direction, discipline, and the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs permission to exist, to act, or to advance. Chaos reveals more than comfort ever could. When pressure rises, when uncertainty spreads, when emotions intensify, people expose their inner structure. Some panic, some overreact, some seek reassurance. Machiavelli understood that in moments of disorder, the calm individual gains disproportionate influence. Calm is not passive, it is controlled presence under stress, and that control alters the balance of power. Most people believe calm is a personality trait. It is not. It is a practiced discipline. The mind, left untrained, defaults to reaction. Fear accelerates thought. Anger narrows perception. Anxiety shortens time horizons. In this state, decisions are made to escape discomfort, not to secure advantage. Calm interrupts this process. It creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space, strategy is born. Observe how situations escalate unnecessarily. A disagreement becomes conflict. A delay becomes crisis. A mistake becomes drama, not because the situation demands it, but because emotions amplify it. The calm individual resists this amplification. While others raise their voice, he lowers his. While others rush, he waits. This contrast alone shifts authority toward him. Machiavelli warned that fear spreads faster than reason. Those who remain calm act as anchors. They stabilize not by reassurance, but by example. Calmness communicates confidence, without explanati. On. It signals that the situation is manageable, even if others cannot yet see how. People instinctively follow those who appear least threatened by uncertainty. Calm also protects information flow. When emotions surge, perception distorts. Details are missed. Motives are misread. Calm preserves accuracy. It allows you to observe behavior rather than react to words. It reveals who panics, who manipulates, who seeks control. Emotional turbulence hides these signals. Calm exposes them. There is also a psychological advantage. An unbothered presence unsettles those who rely on emotional pressure. When provocation fails, frustration rises on the other side. When urgency is not mirrored, control attempts weaken. Calm becomes a mirror that reflects instability back to its source. In negotiations, conflicts, and leadership, calm shapes outcomes. The person who remains composed controls the pace. The pace controls the narrative. The narrative influences decisions. This chain often goes unnoticed, yet it determines who leads and who reacts. Machiavelli would argue that control of tempo is control of power. Calm does not mean indecision. It means deliberate action. When others move impulsively, the calm individual chooses timing. He understands that not every moment requires response. Silence can gather information. Delay can create advantage. Emotional restraint transforms time from an enemy into an ally. Consider how often urgency is manufactured, deadlines framed as emergencies, opinions presented as moral imperatives, reactions demanded immediately. Calm breaks this spell. It allows you to question urgency itself. Who benefits from haste? What happens if you wait? These questions rarely arise in emotional states. Calm also strengthens resilience. Setbacks hurt less when they are not emotionally magnified. Failure becomes data rather than identity. Criticism becomes signal rather than threat. This emotional stability preserves momentum. Many abandon their path not because they lack ability, but because emotional turbulence drains endurance. Machiavelli believed that fortune favors those who can adapt without panic. Rigidity under pressure leads to collapse. Emotional calm allows flexibility. You can change tactics without feeling defeated. You can retreat without shame. You can advance without arrogance. This adaptability compounds strength over time. The calm individual does not need to dominate every moment. His presence alone influences behavior. Others lower their intensity. Conversations slow. Decisions become more thoughtful. This quiet leadership emerges not from authority granted, but from stability demonstrated. Life becomes easier when calm replaces constant reaction. Problems no longer feel overwhelming. People no longer feel intimidating. The world stops feeling hostile and starts feeling navigable. Calm turns complexity into sequence, chaos into structure, pressure into information, and through that transformation, control steadily consolidates where emotional disorder once ruled. What you have heard is not philosophy meant to comfort you. It is strategy meant to liberate you. The world does not overwhelm you by force, it overwhelms you by invitation. Every time you react emotionally, seek approval, absorb noise, or panic under pressure, you grant it access to your inner authority. Most people live exhausted not because life is cruel, but because they are constantly leaking power. When you detach emotionally, you reclaim clarity. When you practice indifference, you filter distraction. When you master yourself over social pressure, you regain authorship of your actions. When you remain calm, you command situations without raising your voice. These are not personality traits reserved for a few. They are disciplines available to anyone willing to stop reacting and start governing themselves. Machiavelli understood that true power is rarely loud. It is composed, selective, patient, and deliberate. The less you care about what does not strengthen you, the more control you gain over what does. Life becomes easier not because obstacles disappear, but because they lose their ability to disturb you. This is the quiet advantage few will ever claim. While others exhaust themselves chasing validation, arguing with noise, bending to pressure, and panicking under stress, you move forward unbothered, focused and steady. And in a world ruled by emotion, the one who remains unmoved does not need to fight for dominance. It forms naturally around him.